Metal Slug Advance is the 9th or so game in the long-running Metal Slug series. As the name would suggest, this was released for Nintendo's Game Boy Advance. Despite being a handheld title, Metal Slug Advance does a great job capturing the action of the arcade originals. The typical Metal Slug formula is maintained here, allowing you to choose between 2 different but similar characters and then play through 5 missions spanning many different locations. The controls are tight and responsive, and our heroes can fire in 4 directions and while jumping. The default pistol is pretty weak, but rescuing prisoners will sometimes result in new weapons. These have limited ammo, but make bosses and larger enemies significantly easier to deal with. Finally, you have grenades, which are useful for taking down some hard-to-reach foes. Of course, it wouldn't be a Metal Slug game without the Metal Slug itself. Like in previous games, driving the tank is a satisfying experience, allowing you to mow down enemies with extreme efficiency. It can also jump, which always makes me smile. While no one would mistake this for a Neo Geo game, the graphics and presentation are surprisingly faithful to the arcade originals, despite the lower resolution and limited memory available on the Game Boy Advance hardware. The character and enemy sprites are vibrant and detailed, though there are fewer frames of animation. The foregrounds and backgrounds are a bit more bland and repeat often, but still retain that hand-drawn look that made the arcade titles so iconic. What has been replicated perfectly is the sound. The music is terrific, with a nice mix of rock and military-style percussions that really sets the tone for the game and has been a hallmark of the series. The quality is a little compressed sounding at times, but never distractingly so. The sound effects are loud, and every weapon has a distinct sound that makes you feel like you really are wielding a weapon of great destruction. There are plenty of voices here as well, with a narrator announcing the start and completion of each stage. Everything fits together perfectly, and helps give Metal Slug that over-the-top arcade feeling. While the visuals and sound have always been high marks for the Metal Slug series since its inception, the gameplay is still right up there with the best of them. The little things are done well, and represented here in Metal Slug Advance. Your fire and enemy fire always stand out, either by being of a contrasting color or an exceptionally large size. Incoming grenades flash bright blue. Little things like this go a long way in making Metal Slug Advance manageable amongst all the chaos that is happening on the screen. The title is not without its flaws, however. For one, enemies seem to respawn at an alarming rate, meaning even incidental backtracking will result in a horde of enemy soldiers reappearing. This is not something I remember happening in the previous titles, and it's a bit odd. Metal Slug Advance is a hard game. At times, it almost feels unfair, especially the bosses. I don't have a problem with challenging games, but parts of this game are just insanely brutal. Until I started recording footage for this video, I had never gotten past the 3rd boss. Even for this review, it took 45 minutes of shooting, dying, and repeating before finally getting past it. Still, difficulty aside, Metal Slug Advance is a ton of fun to play. The audio, visuals, and tight gameplay combine perfectly to create an intense and often relentless adventure that is a blast to shoot through. If you are not a fan of the Metal Slug series, this handheld version isn't going to change your mind. But if you are a fan of the series, or tough run-and-gun games in general, it doesn't get much better than Metal Slug Advance. 4 out of 5.